Good evening, everybody. This is Tuesday, June 16th. Welcome to the Kennebunkport Select Board meeting with a joint meeting with our Growth Planning Committee. At this time, I'll open the Select Board meeting.
And my name's Paul Hogan. I'm Vice Chair of the Growth Planning Committee, and I'd like to open our meeting as well.
So for,
Hi, Tom. We have quorum.
if we would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the joint discussion tonight is going to be about LD 2173. We've had some discussions prior, and obviously the Growth Planning Committee's been diligently working on that. And then 1829, the Fix-It bill, the changes that came from that. So the real purpose of this discussion and why we're having a joint meeting is that the GPC committee is going to want some direction. They're already kicking around some ideas, and we're going to get some insight this evening from the subject matter expert. Tracy Gear is also here for us for questions. The Growth Committee can take us through what they've been thinking and kicking around. And then ultimately, we're going to be looking back to the Select Board to give some guidance to the Growth Planning Committee about what to do to get this moving forward. Okay? Sound fair?
Sounds great.
All right.
All right. Good evening, committee members and board. I'd like to introduce Ben, who is with us from North Star Consulting. He is the consultant that's helping the main office of community affairs. So he'll provide a brief overview regarding the legislative changes that have taken place in the legislature, so you have a baseline education of what those changes are, what we have to look at, and certainly to answer any questions that you may have regarding the path forward for the town. So afterwards, I do have a memo in front of you to give you a list of options that you can certainly discuss. Select board members, I think what was really insightful after we had this conversation is to help give the GPC guidance on what path you're looking for us to focus our efforts on moving forward. So with that being said, I'll turn the floor over to Ben.
Hey, good evening. My name is Ben Smith, North Star Planning. And as Galen had mentioned, we've been contracted by the main office of community affairs to help work directly with communities and provide this information as a baseline to make sure that people understand at a high level the summary of changes that have taken place over the last couple legislative sessions. And I think that as we go through this, and I would certainly defer to the chair on if you want to take questions as we go, or if you want to save questions for the end. I'm fine with either. But I think that there are bound to be questions, and we'll endeavor to answer the ones we can and get you answers for the ones that we don't know. I think we are lucky to have Representative Gear here this evening. This is not a resource that every community gets to have, so you guys are lucky this evening when we get into maybe some of the specifics and the context around some of the specific changes. So with that said, I don't know if you have any further...
Yeah, so I think if we could, because there's so many aspects of it, if we will allow people to ask questions as we go, that might be beneficial. And then we can always do follow-ups if you need to.
Great.
There are a number of slides I noticed, so we ought to be cognizant of that and not get too wrapped up on slide 3.
Okay.
And for general housekeeping purposes for the committee members, you are sharing mics, so if you would have a question, please make sure that you share your mic with your neighbor, just so that we catch it on for the Zoom. And we don't have any current members on Zoom, is that, I want to make sure that also was.
There are no attendees right now.
Sounds good.
Let's see. Looks like this is on.
It worked just a second ago.
To the right arrow?
You gotta
Do you aim,
point it up
you
here.
might want to aim
No,
up it.
no,
I'm
it's at
sorry.
me.
Ah.
Oh, at you.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
All right, short meeting.
Next slide.
See you next time. Don't you hate it when that happens?
There we go.
Yay.
Wait, maybe, yes, I can think of, that's me moving it. So, the headliners here, there are four bills that are in, the slide presentation, but the headliner is 1829. And, that was a very comprehensive bill. It built on the work of LD 2003 from a couple sessions ago. And, this does cover a lot of ground from the standpoint of fire suppression rules within ADUs, rate of growth ordinances. LD 1829 removed rate of growth ordinances. The fix-it bill we'll talk about in a moment added those back. Lot sizes, and it established mandatory training for planning board members. And there were deadlines associated with that. So that was signed by the governor in 2025, and then just a few months ago, LD 2173, and I heard someone earlier in the meeting describe it as the fix-it bill. It amended a lot of the language that had just been adopted in 1829. It did, in most cases, return some authority to the municipalities. It did make some clarifications. As I mentioned earlier, it restored the rate of growth ordinance capability at a local level. And it also updated a couple other bills, not just 1829. We'll talk about 997 and 427 a little later in the slides, but those have to do with commercial development and residential development in commercial zones and parking requirements for residential units in growth areas.
Could you raise that mic up a little bit higher for you, tall man?
Certainly. Is it
Hold on.
right up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I can hear myself better as well, so. So the way the presentation is structured is rather than go through time and talk about these sequentially, they're grouped by topic. So the topic areas that we'll talk about are multifamily lot allowances, lot sizes, lot area per dwelling unit, accessory dwelling units, affordable housing, density bonuses, rate of growth ordinances, and then we'll get into the board training requirements. There were some changes to the subdivision review statute as well. The two other bills I had mentioned briefly had to do with childcare facilities in residential areas, housing in commercial zones, and parking requirements. So multifamily lot allowances, this is allowing more than one dwelling unit on a property. So generally, this allows up to 3 units per lot in residential, it says residential areas here, in areas that are outside of the growth areas. And 4 units per lot, including ADUs in designated growth areas or areas that are served by water and sewer. So LD 2003 allowed for 2 units per lot outside of the growth area. And current statutes allow for 3 per lot outside of growth areas. They can be attached, like a duplex or a 3-unit building, or they can be 3 individual homes. Towns can provide for dimensional requirements. Certainly, dimensional requirements apply today for multifamily, but they have to apply to multifamily just as they would for a single-family home. So, if you're going to have, for example, 200 feet of frontage required for one home, you couldn't require 300 feet for the next unit. You could require additional frontage, but it would have to be commensurate with the single family.
Question, clarification? So we've had this discussion on the 3, and while I kept saying 3, I kept hearing, no, this doesn't change outside the growth area, our local ordinance.
Correct. So the question is regarding density. So even though the ordinance says you can allow multifamily in a maybe rural area of town, they still have to comply with your density requirements outside of the LD 2173 density for growth area and water and utilities. So for example, in Kennebunkport, ours is a 3-acre requirement. In the rural part of town that's not connected to water, it's not in your growth area. So that would still apply. So they would have to have the density of 3 acres per unit. We're not restricting them than having 3 units on a land, but they have to still meet your density.
So you'd have to have 9 acres to have 3 units? Okay, good.
That's correct.
So the lot would have to be 9 acres, It'd be one lot, 9 acres.
Yep.
3 units.
So there is also, like, that's the minimum. So there are some communities who are talking about, you know, maybe it's 3 acres for the first and then 2 acres for the additional. So you do have the ability locally to reduce but it has to be at least equal. It cannot be more. So you couldn't say 3 acres for the first lot and then 5 acres for the second or something like that. And then the final point here is that planning board review is not permitted for 4 or fewer dwelling units within a structure. So this is a change from the subdivision statute that everybody has grown familiar with over the last many years. This changes subdivision review so that if you're reviewing 4 or fewer dwelling units in a single structure, like a 3-unit building, or in a growth area, a 4-unit building, that does not require subdivision review. It may require site plan review, and that is totally permissible, but subdivision would not apply. So this gets to the lot size requirements, and a handful of communities that we've given this presentation to have said.
I'm sorry, Ben, could you go back and, because the gray is important to us, the top.
Yep, fair, yep. So there are exemptions to the requirements for multifamily in that coastal barrier resource systems, special flood hazard areas, and coastal sand dune systems, if identified in your ordinances, are exempt from multiple dwelling units on a single property.
Sorry, Ben, is that our shoreland zone? Can I interpret that shoreland zone, or is it more specific than that?
So yeah, the shoreland zone is actually pretty limited in definition. It's 250 from the normal high water mark. Your flood zones are actually more expansive than your shoreland zone in town.
And so how do we look at the special flood hazard area? Is it up to a certain, like, we have different floodplain maps?
Yep.
Is it zone, what zone is it specifically?
So these
Where is that from?
these resources are not zone-based. They're natural resource-based. So if you identify these in your ordinance, a coastal barrier resource system is defined in statute. It's a type of landform that you may have here in your town. I am certain you have flood zone. There are places within the 100-year floodplain that would be exempt from the multifamily as well. A coastal sand dune system is defined in statute. And I happily turn the mic over to Representative Gear.
Thanks, Ben. Just on this question, knowing how important that this issue was for our community, I want to give a shout out to Galen because I worked very closely with Galen to really specify these maps. So these are maps that are created by different entities. The flood map is the FEMA map that we're all familiar with. The other 2 maps are state-generated maps, to Ben's point, that exist today and are referred to in law. So it stays consistent with a map that is defined in law, and those other two things, I'm sure Galen can explain a little better than I can, but really, it is the dune systems that we have that we know are very sensitive and vulnerable to flooding, and then the coastal barrier systems that are also vulnerable, and again, we know are changing and being threatened with every storm that we have. So I think that was, as we put this bill together, having those definitions in there really clearly so it can be very clear. You can pull up those maps and see where those areas exist, was really important. So that was a thing that I think will provide a lot of clarity when we look at our planning moving forward in Kennebunkport. I did want to mention quickly, we did spend time in committee talking about a new map that the state is working on, and it's a big effort. It includes the Department of Environmental Protection, it includes the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and MOCA, and the folks that work, the Office of Community Affairs. They're putting together a map that takes the existing flood maps, because we know the FEMA maps aren't always 100% up to date, and it looks at the sea level rise, basically, the inundation, given what we know about what's happening with sea level rise and what we're going to predict, actually to look at the flooding that will likely happen as a result of that. The only reason that map is not in this law is that it does not exist yet. They're working on it. They expect to complete it sometime in 2027. And at that point, if we did want to include that in the statute, we could revisit that as a proposal. So I just wanted to say that we really did work very hard to make sure that communities like ours that are really, really impacted by flooding, that we are absolutely being clear that you can, those areas are exempted from the changes that are in this law, because that would not make any sense to allow more development in areas that we know are going to flood either now or in the future. So, and again, a shout out to Galen. Thanks for all the help.
Yep. Thank you, Representative. I just had a quick question about the last map. Do you know what sea level rise they're looking at? Is it the 3.9 feet, or for the? I have it as a policy suggestion for the town to consider, looking at an overlay, but I didn't know if they had a number yet, or if they're still working on it.
I can get back to you on what number that is. I think it's the 3.9, but it might be a higher number. They're really looking. It's NOAA and all the prediction, basically the bathtub, what is going to be in the bathtub, so that as that affects the flooding. So I can get back to you on which level they're using, though.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So Galen, just really quick, what we should take away from this, in your words, the special flood hazard area would be the 100-year flood line?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And you do have a coastal hazard also in town, which is mostly Goose Rocks Beach.
Right,
So that would also be another one that we would exempt.
right.
Nothing downtown?
No. You have some, so you do a floodplain in Dock Square area, so there is.
So I think we should look at it, because I think in one of the GPC meetings, our chair of GPC, Dan, was referencing the 100-year floodplain line, and didn't it come close to where we're sitting right now?
He was looking at the climate sea level rise. That's where I said about the climate resiliency overlay, to look at that, and that's what the representative just mentioned.
Okay, so that's the next,
Yeah.
that's potentially, that's not our 100.
No, it's
Correct,
not
that's on 100
Okay,
year.
that's not the 100-year. Okay, so that would be
That's the 3 foot.
potentially the
Yeah.
next iteration of the map.
And is the coastal sand dune on our GIS?
Yes, we did add that layer, so it is available.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for,
I have a question.
yeah.
So right now, if you're in AE 10. Sorry. So right now. Yeah, I know. Thanks for taking care of me. So if you're in AE 10.
Yes.
Right now, this new overlay will put you at AE 14, like overnight?
No. So what the 100-year floodplain, the AE, is in the 100-year floodplain.
Got it.
So what this
Got
is,
it.
Yep. What this is saying is there's a separate layer that's going to probably go further inland, because it's projecting high level sea level rise decades from now. And so that's what the state is trying to do from a policy perspective, is we don't want to encourage more housing in areas that we know projected are going to be underwater. And so we are going to have this special layer that eventually will exclude new housing in that area. So that's,
Thanks.
yep.
Will that go into effect prior to this law going into effect? Will we have the new map, I guess, before we actually have to allow new units?
Yeah, I think that's for the legislature to determine, and
It's my understanding that they've been working on those maps for about, that overlay for about a year, and they're expected to have it out mid-2027. So it would not be available by July 1, 2027, most likely, but as soon as it would be available, we could consider a change to the law to make that also be part of the statute.
Thank you.
Thanks. The final point here was a point I mentioned earlier, is that you can allow for planning board review of multifamily for reasons other than it being multifamily, like if you had it included in your site plan ordinance, for example. So, minimum lot size. This is a topic that is separated out into different categories. If you're in a growth area or not in a growth area, and if you're in an area with sewer and water, or you're in an area that does not have sewer and water. So if you're in a growth area, and I believe Kennebunkport has growth areas and non-growth areas, and I believe that the town also has areas that have sewer and water, and there are areas without sewer and water. So if you're in a growth area served by sewer and water, your minimum lot size can be no larger than 5,000 square feet. If you're in a growth area without sewer and water, your minimum lot size can be no larger than 20,000 square feet. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And if you're in a non-growth area with sewer and water, but even if it's not designated as a growth area, but if there's sewer and water, your minimum lot size in those areas can be no larger than 10,000 square feet. And if you're in a non-growth area and there's no sewer and water, the normal septic laws apply. So by default, that minimum would have to be at least 20,000 square feet. It could be larger. So if you have a 3-acre minimum lot size in those areas today, that would not necessarily be affected by this statute.
Wait. How? How does it not get affected?
You could reduce your lot size in non-growth areas without sewer and water down to 20,000 square feet if you wanted to.
Right.
But you don't have to. You could leave it where it is. You could make them larger. The non-growth area without sewer and water are those places that have been called out as like the least appropriate places for more housing development. So at the minimum, you have to follow the plumbing code, the minimum lot size by, right.
But that's the minimum.
It's a 20,000.
It's 20,000.
Right.
But can you go above that
Yes.
minimum?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
The town can require a larger minimum lot size.
Okay.
So you today do have a larger minimum lot size. You don't need to make it smaller based on these statutes.
So for example, can we just run through really quick to remind the board of the growth areas? So for example, our growth area is the port up to the village parcel. Everything, the majority of it is on water sewer, except for village parcel. It's things how many feet outside of the sewer and water?
so it's within 1,000 lineal feet of sewer
Okay,
and water.
all right, so,
Yeah.
so that,
I'm sorry, what's current lot size down in the port?
What part of the port?
The neighborhoods.
So in this area right here, it's about 40,000 square feet.
So houses that are non-conforming now will become conforming.
Some might, yeah.
Well,
And-
but now the lot size is 5,000 square feet.
Correct.
right?
Yeah, but some of them right now are like a third of an acre, at present. So they're considered not conforming because they're not 40,000 square feet.
But there will be.
They will conform,
Yeah,
so they,
But they're not conforming.
Right.
yeah.
presently, so they couldn't do certain things that they'd be able to do in
Right.
the future.
Right,
But they will become
conforming.
conforming.
Yep.
Okay, so then if we just keep playing it forward, then we go to another area in town that is not deemed growth area, but does have sewer and water, and that is the Goose Rocks Beach Zone.
Yep.
And that would fit into your bucket of,
10,000 square feet.
So, but then we have the exclusion language that does not allow for increased housing.
On the sand dune.
But
Right.
let
And
me
the
go-
floodplain.
Right.
Can I go back, because I'm struggling with this, the math mostly. So if I have the 40,000 foot minimum lot size next door, across the street, right? That's what's currently in the code, and I have city water and sewer.
Yep.
That means that I can then split that into 4 5,000 square foot lots.
As long as you meet all the.
Or if I want to if I want to knock my house down and build
Wouldn't that be
4,
8? Am I doing it right? No. Yeah,
8.
Sorry,
Okay, see, it's
8.
math. That's my
No.
math.
Yeah, you can do 8 lots.
Yeah,
As long as you have the
oh, yeah, 'cause
frontage. and
5
everything.
and 8 is 40, right?
Right, yeah,
So you do 8 lots out of the single lot now.
yeah.
And is there the town any setbacks, all of
Yeah,
that?
there's
That's
other
all
things,
right.
Setbacks would still apply, lot coverage would still apply.
Okay.
They'd still have to meet the road frontage requirements for the town.
and we also just passed the ordinance in the November and the June ballot, so that's the water,
That'll be in November.
Right.
That's in
oh, we did
November.
parking,
Yeah, you did parking, yeah,
November.
yeah.
In November, we're gonna do the water runoff that we just had walked through.
So
And so
really-
that will have to be, that's within our purview, right? We can, that's an overlay that the towns can do that will, you might not be able to get 8, you might have to get 6.
Well, is it even 6? So realistically, is this maybe this is not an appropriate question, but if you had a lot downtown that was an acre, what could one realistically do if everything happened to fall, well, with the setbacks we have in the water, boom? 8 is potential by this one thing, but what's real? 3, 5?
Yeah, it all depends on the lot, it depends on the configuration of the lot, it all depends on its road frontage, it all depends on, lot coverage requirements, stormwater capacity, can you manage the stormwater on the site? It all depends.
That's not a satisfactory answer.
I
If
know.
I'm- If
Yeah.
I'm a
Wetlands,
voter.
there could be
Yeah.
wetlands.
If I'm
you
a
have to
voter that wants to
deduct-
think about what does this
I
really
know.
mean?
Yeah,
Just want a number.
How many, well, I want a sense of what it reasonably means.
I'd want a straw lot, like a straw man. I'd want to see, given 3 different 40,000 square foot lots situated in, sort of random but representative places in the town,
I like that.
what would that be?
Yep.
Conceptually, what could you squeeze on those lots? Using the current guidelines, because I think that makes it real, to me at least.
I agree. And pick a worst case,
Yeah.
pick one that would be the best case, or depends how you define worst and best, and then pick one that might be kind of an average, just from your thought of what they look like. That would be incredibly useful.
Just another question. So this says water, sewer. We have areas in town that are just water and no sewer. How would that fit into that? And I'm assuming that wetlands, 40,000 square feet now lot, but if it's 20,000 of it's wetlands, it's really not a 40,000. It could become 8. It's something like that.
Yeah.
That's buildable feet, right? Is that?
It has to be buildable, 40,000.
So I think that's kind of, I would also give a very similar answer to what Galen had provided, in that it really depends on the configuration and the environmental constraints of the lot. What this statute does is provide some theoretical maximums that will change based on site-specific conditions of each property. So on a 40,000 square foot lot, you could theoretically create 8 lots, but they would need frontage and need to have building envelopes based on setbacks and such. You could leave it the way it is and put 4 dwelling units on it, because you're allowed to put 4 dwelling units on a single lot. So any combination of lot divisions and multiple dwelling units on a single lot are possible, but you will be limited by environmental constraints, by sewer capacity potentially, by parking requirements, and other kind of regulatory limits, as well as environmental.
Water runoff, yeah,
Stormwater.
stormwater.
So what this does is essentially, even taking a step back, is try and find those places across the state at a state level, which is what the statute was written at, that are most appropriate for more development. And when I hear you talking about, boy, we have an awful lot of small lots in some of these areas that don't meet today's zoning standards, I think, in my sense, and I don't know if the representative would want to weigh in on this, but it's kind of trying to rewind, like allow some of those things that were once legal to be legal again in certain places. So this is the threshold. This is the floor, and there will be site-specific limits, as well as some of those exemptions that are going to apply in Kennebunkport. Fair.
The
It's-
one thing
it's-
I was worse at the math was physics. And this is like that, like dead cat, live cat, Schrodinger guy, who's in the box. You look at it, it's dead, but it's alive, but you don't know if it's really dead and alive when you're not looking. It's very abstract.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it real.
We will, yeah.
So related to lot size, another way communities will regulate development is by density, lot area per dwelling unit. Does that apply?
Yeah.
So, in growth areas served by sewer and water, you can require no more than 1,250 square feet for the first 4 units on a property. So that adds up to 5,000.
So that's each.
No more than 1,250 square feet for each of
Each.
the first 4
Each
units.
would be a good word to put in.
So in an acre, you could probably have, if everything was perfect, you could have 16 units.
More than that.
If you had a flat, well-drained property with no requirements for internal street frontage and all off-street parking, yeah, you're right.
That's the point, that those are the numbers that don't make sense to me, because that's not gonna happen physically.
You don't know that.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, so in a non-growth area with water and sewer, it's 10,000 square feet each for the first 2 units in a structure. In a growth area without water and sewer, and in a non-growth area with, they both say, without water and sewer, the septic applies. In a non-growth area without water and sewer, that's where the statute is silent. So that's where a 3-unit minimum lot size in the non-growth areas without water and sewer, there is no density requirements there. But there are density requirements in growth areas, whether you have water or sewer or not.
So a clarifying question that I think we need to grapple with is this 1,250 square foot requirement in the growth area. Does that, the town currently exempts any land that is not upland, so any wetlands are excluded from that. Does that still apply for us as a town?
I don't know. I think that this is based on a raw land, like a net residential. I will find out if those additional deductions from a lot would count toward that.
Can you say that question again?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in our town, we require, as part of the net residential density for your lot, you have to reduce first anything that's in the floodplain
Yes,
and anything that's in a wetland.
yes.
Anything that's in a right-of-way also from that reduction.
Okay.
In terms of buildable area.
Yes.
So we're calculating what is the actual
Yeah.
buildable area of my
Right.
lot.
So that's what we currently do. For any single family or any type of development in town, you would have to reduce all that and have the net still needs to be, the leftover amount has to be 40,000 square feet. So if you have wetlands on your property and a right-of-way that runs through it, you might even have a larger lot in order to build a single-family home on it.
And Ben, that's not, you have to get back to us on that, that's not.
That, I don't believe that scenario is addressed in statute. This is based on the raw land, whether there's wetlands on it or not. That would apply. As I mentioned earlier, there are things like, maybe by statute, you'd be allowed up to 4 lots on a particular piece of property, but there would be environmental limitations that would, maybe make it so that it's really only maybe 1 lot.
So 1829, the thing that, Rep. Gare went through. The 1829, what, Rep. Gare went through with us, that brought in our flood and stuff, but we're,
That exemption was for multifamily units. So if you could build duplexes or single-family homes at this density in a growth area with sewer and water.
in a flood area.
You would have,
Exclude it.
you would
Okay.
have, yeah, so from a density standpoint, you could calculate it, but from a buildability, you may not be able to get a building permit.
Okay, we can exclude, okay. And I just have one question for the Goose Rocks Beach area. So Binnacle Hill, sewer and water.
Yep.
Outside of the floodplain. Could a site like that, then, it's not in the growth area, so it would fall through the three.
Non-growth area with the water and sewer, so that's 10,000 square feet for each 2 units.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I don't think we ever addressed, what do we do with the areas in town that just have water? How does this,
The statute does talk about that. Did you want to? I was going to say, I would have to look it up. I don't know that number off the top of my head.
So, yes. So the statute is an and, so it's water and sewer.
okay.
Other than the non-growth without, which is you're just going to the Health and Human Services septic requirements, so that's at that level. And then the other thing is that, I just want to say from the perspective of the intent of the law, Mary Beth, the intent of the law is not to override, if you've got a wetland in the middle of your property, clearly that is not, we're not saying now you get to, pave over the wetland to build your however many units. So it's really important. The intent of the law isn't to do that. And if we would need to clarify anything moving forward, we could do that. But just wanted to say that out loud because I don't want that to get lost.
As long as we could do what we're doing right now, which is to Galen's point, you start with your lot and then you do your subtraction. You subtract out your wetlands and then you subtract out your right-of-way. So as long as we're still able to do that, I feel that would be good for, well, I don't know.
And obviously, it's got to be contiguous area. There's got to be some shape to that remaining area, yeah.
Yep,
And
you
that's
have
the
to keep it.
setbacks, right?
Yep.
So that's, yeah.
And then I just had a question regarding, so existing deeds or road or homeowners associations that stipulate something like 1 house per, acre. Is it my understanding that those deeds and homeowners associations their rules are overridden by this?
I think it's fair to say that these statutes are not changing the fact that local zoning requirements are separate from private deed restrictions and homeowners associations. So I'm sure people around this table can think of examples where zoning would allow a higher level of development than the homeowners association documents would allow. This does not change that relationship between them. So, for example, the planning board can review a plan against the local ordinances, but they're not reviewing homeowners association documents to that level. And I don't believe the code enforcement officer is going to go out and enforce those density requirements, just like they wouldn't enforce a clothesline in the front yard kind of very common homeowners association stipulation. So,
So, I'm sorry, I lost you. So
Yeah,
it
answer.
means that,
Yes or no?
so it means that that those associations, those deeds take precedent.
Irrespective.
So,
With respect.
so it would be up to the association to take that to court, to challenge their deed restrictions that are in place. Municipalities are not going to get involved with private deed restrictions. We will issue the permit as it's allowed by law, but the private association will have to challenge that in court. That's not for us to get involved in.
So what if
Janet's talking.
you've got an existing 30-year-old place and no one ever thought of ADUs?
Yep.
And somebody says, oh, I'm going to put an ADU in, and the homeowners association votes to put a restriction, no ADUs. This is after these laws have been passed. Can they do that?
They can certainly do it. They're going to have to enforce it on their own.
yeah,
I'm not an attorney for that, but that's, usually the deed restrictions are never recognized by the town. That's a private deed restriction. If it was a deed restriction that the town imposed, we would certainly honor
So
our
if
deed
they
restriction.
came and said, give me a building permit for an
Yep.
ADU, you would say no?
No.
No, we
Say
would
yes.
issue.
You would issue?
Say
Yep.
yes.
They
So
can't say
a
no.
common one that has happened in the past is manufactured housing.
Right,
So we have to allow manufactured housing wherever single family is.
sure.
But a lot of these subdivisions that took place, they put deed restrictions that said no trailers, no manufactured housing. We as a town always issue the permit. It's up to the
it.
association to challenge.
Thank you.
Yep.
accessory dwelling units. So accessory dwelling units are required under existing statute. LD 2003 mandated that accessory dwelling units are allowed wherever residential single-family homes are allowed. The changes to accessory dwelling units as a result of this recent legislation basically prohibit a town from requiring sprinklers in ADUs. I don't know if that was an issue in this community. It has been in others. ADUs are also now allowed on lots with both single-family and 2 or 3 unit structures in areas that allow residential uses, even if they're conditional. So you may have, so some communities have zoning that say, you know, single-family homes are allowed, a duplex is allowed as a conditional use. That would now be allowed to have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit.
One.
At least one, yes. You could locally decide that maybe
Oh, I see.
each would have, but you need to allow at least one. And then I'm not sure, this third point was, I gave this presentation last night and I said I would find out, but I haven't found out today. ADUs may share a wall with a multifamily, fully residential structure. Again, I'm not sure if that has been an issue in other communities, but the definition of an ADU is that it can be within, attached to, or detached from a structure, and the statute now says it could be attached to a multifamily. The next ADU slide is one ADU, the first ADU is exempted from density requirements. So I think that's a clarification from an existing statute that said ADUs don't count toward density or net residential density calculations. In areas where communities are allowing more than one per lot, only the first one is exempt. So the second ADU could be counted for density purposes.
So for clarification, I was under the impression that if you have a 5,000 square foot lot in the growth area with water and sewer, and you have the 4 dwellings, you can't have an additional ADU. I thought they were counting, you have to count that ADU as part of the dwelling for the lot size.
That is correct.
So it's part of the 4.
Yes.
So
It's part of the 4, but it doesn't count toward the density.
Wait a minute, it's part of the 4, but the 4 is the, I'm missing, density and number, is there a difference? It's part of 4, but not part of density.
So you can't.
That's confusing.
So you can't have, I interpret it as, you can have 4, and one of the four could be an ADU.
Got that.
But you can't have 4 plus an ADU on that one size. Is that right?
Got that, but I don't get what,
That's-
okay, well, if
that
that's
is
a fact,
correct.
we'll just
That's
leave
it.
it. Semantics is
That's
getting
it,
me.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Um,
another question on that, in a non-growth, non-sewer water area where you allow single-family or two-family houses, you get one additional ADU, or does that not apply to?
No, you have to allow at least one.
At least one?
Again, well, I'll say residency requirements for ADUs are no longer allowed. It's clarified that they're not allowed, and that's basically the owner of the property must reside in one of the units, was a standard that some communities had, or only a blood relation to the property owner may occupy the ADU. So this clarifies that situation. And again, like multifamily, communities can exempt areas from the ADU requirements for the same kind of natural resource areas. So that's something that certainly should be considered.
In terms of the residency requirements, I thought this meant that you did not have to have it as a year-round residence, so that you could short-term rent ADUs, because we currently do not allow you to short-term rent an ADU.
That is fine. ADUs are not always short-term rentals, but if you regulate short-term rentals, you can regulate ADUs as short-term rentals. So
I don't want to. I want them to not be short-term rentals. Our land use before used to say you can't have it be for temporary use. So now I thought with the law change, it could be. Am I misunderstanding?
Yes, so the change was dealing more with relation, it wasn't dealing with our 6-month
Right.
residency requirement. That's still, so we have a
That
6-month
still is in
residency
effect.
requirement.
No.
That's not impacted, it was if it was a blood relation or the property owner itself.
Correct.
Had to be in the ADU, so that, we're still, I think our policy is still in place,
Good.
it's not an issue.
So, just so, So what's our so policy? An ADU could be rented out to someone unrelated to you.
Yep.
As a permanent residence for them for longer term.
For 6 months or more, yep,
Yes, okay.
yep. I mean, you can't short-term rent it,
No, you
Yeah.
don't want that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to live, and the owner doesn't have to live in the other dwelling on the property.
correct.
good. So housing, affordable housing density bonus, let's see. The statutory language ties affordable housing density bonuses and parking relief to growth areas or areas that have water and sewer. New language adds a height bonus, so the ability to basically take advantage of additional units through a density bonus by allowing you to build higher within those growth areas. It does require approval of the state fire marshal and, again, public water and sewer. So there is there a height limit in the growth areas today?
Yes.
This would potentially allow for additional height up to 55 feet. So many communities have a 35-foot height limit. If a project came along that could take advantage of density bonuses, they could go higher than that, up to a 14-foot height bonus or 55 feet.
And
Or,
only-
no, up to.
Up to,
If ours is 35, they couldn't go above
They
49,
could go 14 feet,
49.
we have to
Correct.
allow 14,
correct,
is what this says.
right.
And the affordable is one unit.
The affordable housing density bonus is applicable to affordable housing projects. So this is not like a single ADU. This would be a multi-unit project. And it's a 250% density bonus. So if you allowed What would be a good example? If you allowed, 4 units per acre on a property, you could go 250% of that, so you could get 10 units on that property if they were affordable.
In the growth
All
area.
affordable?
In the growth area,
And
on
sewer and
sewer
water.
and water.
And they would have to all be affordable in the sense that they're income restricted as to who's living there?
Yes, in statute, there are income thresholds that would be,
So you couldn't mix affordable and,
I thought it was 51%. Am I getting that mixed up?
that's too bad.
I thought it was 51% of the units, but I could be.
So yeah, in statute, there are definitions of affordable housing for income restricted levels. So that would be up to 60% of HUD AMI. And the residents can't be paying more than 30% of their income on their rent. So that's the affordability. Beyond that, there is a lot of flexibility in adding market rate or higher level incomes within any kind of a building in order to make the projects pencil out, as they say. So I think that that's a really important consideration that we as a community have as we look at accommodating people with differing income levels. But for the piece that is for the density bonus, the 2.5, those units are the ones that get the 2.5 applied to them.
And how does the height work then? I have a 50-unit project and, half of them are regular market rate and half of them are,
That's a specific question that I'm not sure the answer to. I think most of the projects that I'm aware of around the state that have that, they might have 35 units, and this is obviously more LIHTC, bigger projects, 35 units that are income restricted affordable and 8 market rate units, and they use that to help subsidize the project to make it work. In our community, I think we have to really think about what income levels we're looking to serve and how that project would be structured. But again, the 2.5 density bonus would apply to those income restricted affordable units.
Okay.
Then you can build out a project with other things as well.
So when we were in the GPC committee, I thought at one point we talked about the 5,000 square foot lot and then one structure that would have 4 units in it. And then, one of those 4 units could be affordable, and then that unit that has the 4 in it could get the height bonus. Is that a correct understanding?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The density bonus applies to the project. So if you have a lot that allows 4 units and you're building affordable units, that means automatically you get the 2.5 multiplier to that. So that means you can do 10 units. And in fact, that is how these projects become affordable, because you can do the number of units required to make them able to charge a rent that's affordable to someone.
Okay, I think I might be mixing things up because I think the 2.5 was in the 2003 bill.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
And then now with the later 2 bills, we've got the height bonus. And so I think that's where my confusion is the 2.5 density, does this thing, so when we were reading this, I think in GPC, I thought this was part of our GPC discussion at one point. We were using the example of a 5,000 square foot lot in our growth area. Somebody could build 4 units, and if one of those 4 was affordable, they could get the height bonus.
I think we need to be careful about definitions.
Okay.
A dwelling unit is a unit where one entity, family unit, a person lives. So when you say 1 unit is affordable, then that density bonus, either for the height or for the bigger project, doesn't apply. It applies to the project itself.
Okay, so on our 5,000 square foot lot, we would have to have the 51% affordability to then be able to go back and get that height increase for all the units that were affordable on that 5,000 square foot lot.
So it's for the entire project.
Okay,
So whatever the project is, so if it's a 4 units,
yeah,
you'd have to have 3 of them, 51%.
Yeah.
Of them would have to be affordable.
yep,
and then they would certainly get the bonus at that point.
Okay.
On the
Yeah.
fourth
They can, they can make them, yeah.
The building itself.
Would get the bonus. So if I had a stacked duplex,
Yeah.
I've got a duplex and a duplex on top of it. So I've got four units.
Yep,
One of them is affordable,
okay,
okay?
yep,
I'm sorry, 3 of them are affordable.
okay, yep,
Now I can get another floor on it, and I can put 2 affordables in it. So I can get 3 affordables and 3 markets.
yeah, that's the only thing I don't, again, we have not had an affordable project yet to go through it, but the question is, would the total units, even after the bonuses, have to be 51%, and I don't, that does not, Yeah. that's clarification. I need
The
from OPEB,
whole-
but-
I just tend to look at this from the other angle. You want to create a certain number of units. 51% of them are affordable. Then to that project, both of the density
Yeah.
bonuses for the height and the would apply. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
the
makes
whole
sense,
project
makes
has
sense.
to be 51%.
I'm trying to be too clever by half, I think, so that's, yeah.
And I think most 3-story buildings would fit in a 35-foot height limit anyway, I believe. That the 14 feet is really to get that extra, like, 4th floor. So I'm not sure, like, a 5 or 6 unit project.
Well, then I'll add a few more in, then that's a good
Yep.
idea, put a few more affordable, but, all right, good. But we're getting a lot of affordables out of it, so.
Quick question, whether they're rented or purchased, what keeps them affordable in the long term? Like, let's say someone purchases it
Yep.
and they fit the income. What's preventing them from selling it at market rate 15 years later?
They are required to maintain affordability for an amount of time. I don't know if it's 20 or 30 years, but I believe the statute requires that it be monitored. And who monitors it is usually a local housing trust or the community.
It's deed restricted.
I think we do 50, don't we, years? Or
we allowed-
what is
Yeah,
housing?
This was LD 2003.
Yeah.
So it's different than the trust.
Right,
This was, part of LD 2003 had the density bonus of 2.5, and then, because I remember talking about this in our GPC, it had the 30-year
30-year.
time limit in it.
The way that the affordability for various kinds of projects comes in isn't necessarily through the density bonuses that we're discussing. Usually, if you are building affordable units that are income restricted, that the only way that those get financed is through our main housing finance authority, which is Maine Housing. And all of their loan requirements basically require either as the ongoing rental or in the deed restrictions that you have, that you're providing at least 10 years for ownership and 35 years for rental. So you have something built into your financing arrangements that requires that, and that's sort of separate from the law we're discussing, which is the structure and the format of the project, but the financing is where the affordability guarantees come in.
So keep in mind, when we adopted LD 2003, we did put specific performance standards that said that it had to be affordable for up to 30 years.
That sounds better.
So that is something we did clarify. and-
So that would be in the deed restriction, also be in the financing arrangement. So it would be on the mortgage for the building. So anyone who wants to get out of it can't. I mean, there's a longer thing that happens at year 30, but usually the financing agencies will just renew that and keep it for another X number of years. But yeah, you can't just sell it for market.
Yeah.
Rate of growth?
Right.
Okay. LD 1829 removed local ability to establish rate of growth ordinances or growth caps. The Fix-It bill returned that ability to local communities. And so you may establish within a growth area, a growth cap, that is at least 105% of the mean number of total permits, including affordable, for I believe, the previous 5 years, but prohibits building permit restrictions or requirements for affordable housing units. So you have to take the number of affordable housing units into account when you establish the growth cap, but they cannot be subject to growth cap limits. You may have more restrictive growth caps, rate of growth ordinances outside of those areas, in non-growth areas. But that's the methodology for within a growth area.
Yeah, ours is right now 110% over the last 10 years. So that's our current multiplier effect. And then they also break down the total number. If it's still less than 40, we issue 40 for the year, and then we break it down 50% for growth area, 30% in transition, and then 20 in rural. So that wouldn't be an issue.
It may not be. It may require some adjustments, but it sounds like you're not looking at like a major change or a major overhaul. It may be some adjustments, but essentially that program sounds like it largely complies. And then in regard to board training, there is a mandatory training for zoning board of appeals and planning board folks within 180 days of their appointment. And that's a one-time training. Some communities offer annual training, but this establishes a minimum that each board member, planning board and ZBA member will have some type of orientation or training in regard to statute. I will say my sense is that this is probably not very well defined in statute, but it does allow communities to say that training could be from the Maine Municipal Association, it could be from your regional planning agency, it might be very topic specific. It leaves room for what that training looks like, but it does require some training.
Quick question, back a slide, you don't have to go back, but just on the 10-year or 30-year resale or rental at a lower rate. If I need to replace my roof, I have one of these units, I need to replace my roof, it costs me $10,000, and I go to sell it in 10 years. Do I get that? Am I allowed to recapture my capital improvements, capital expenditures? I want to put in granite countertops, maybe you're not going to allow me to do that.
Right.
But what about the necessary and reasonable?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that there are some affordable programs that allow property owners to make improvements to the property, adding porches, interior renovations, those kinds of things that they get value out of. But you're still restricted when it comes time to sell the property to make sure that it meets those affordability requirements. So in some cases, it may be a disincentive to make those kinds of investments. I don't know the answer to that question.
The price can go up, it's the affordable, if inflation.
And you're saying, Paul, that you're asking if it is a single family or a private home that you own, as opposed, I think that those are really dependent on the entity that is building the homes, like if it was our housing trust, they have a set of requirements and rules to that, and also, who you can sell it to, that it also needs to go to someone within the income limits. So that's not really in this part of the law, that it would be in how the housing authority or the housing trust or whatever entity it was that was doing that, how they would set up their rules.
Right.
Thank you. Good question and good clarification. As I mentioned earlier, there are some changes to subdivision review threshold. It increases the general definition of a subdivision to 5 or more dwelling units on a lot within 5 years. So I mentioned earlier, on a specific lot or in a building, you can create 4 new dwelling units, and that does not trigger subdivision review like it has for a long time. It does not change the definition outside of those areas. So if you're creating lots dwellings on individual lots. The 3 in 5 years still applies, but this is for on a specific property, on a single property. You can have up to 4 without requiring subdivision review. But subdivision does apply from 5 and above on a lot.
I'm confused on the 3 and the 5 you just mentioned. The
So-
old rules.
Yeah, so that is not a change from today's subdivision statute. The subdivision statute changes in growth areas where you're adding up to 4 units on a single property
Just in the growth area.
in a growth area. If you're outside the growth area, it's no more than, you have to have 3 on a property. So it's essentially, I think, people were running into situations with LD 2003 where they were allowed to, have more development rights on their property, but were running into situations where they were now having to go through subdivision, which created a barrier or hurdle to developing that property the way they could otherwise do it under statute. So the state modified the subdivision requirements in those situations. So this is LD 997, which essentially allows housing in commercially zoned areas. So anywhere you allow commercial uses like buying and selling of goods or services, restaurants, retail, those zones should also allow residential uses as permitted uses. It does exempt industrial uses. So if you have like an industrial park or a heavy manufacturing zone, something like that, you don't need to allow residential units there. But in a normal commercial zone or a downtown, residential units would be allowed if you allow commercial units there. The statute does clarify that the number of units in any development can be limited, and it does establish the ability to require ground level commercial. So you don't have to have like 2- and 3-story buildings that are strictly residential. You can allow ground floor commercial to maintain a downtown or a village building rhythm. And you may establish other siting and design related restrictions on that residential use around setbacks and screening and other kinds of considerations, but it has to be an allowed use in those areas.
Galen, do we have this anywhere? This doesn't, really doesn't.
So Dock Square would be where this might be an issue, and I think certainly that's one of my policy recommendations is to look at
allow it.
excluding residential on the first floor. We did something similar in my other communities that I was at, because once they turn residential, you'll never
Yeah.
get that in your downtown.
But this does that, right?
It does allow you to put that standard in place where you can prevent residential on the
Right,
first
right.
floor.
This allows them to have ground floor mandated commercial.
Yep.
Good,
In a commercial zone.
We can
in a commercial zone,
we can do that, yeah.
yeah.
And did we
So it is,
change,
sorry, no, please.
did we change and exclude residential in Dock Square fairly recently?
We only excluded, so we excluded manufactured, single family from that to avoid having manufactured housing in Dock Square. And that was to comply with the manufactured housing law, because the manufactured housing law, so wherever you have single family, you have to allow manufactured housing, so we removed that use. We still allow, we have something called residential mixed use.
Yeah.
So that's still allowed in Dock Square, which I think is the intent of this as
This is
well.
really what
Right.
this is
You
about,
still
right?
allow residential, but it has to be mixed with commercial.
Great, yeah. Okay.
Finally, the last LD 427 has to do with parking requirements in growth areas. And it says that towns cannot require more than 1 off-street parking space per dwelling unit within a growth area. A developer or a project owner may choose to have more than 1, but the town can't require more than 1. You can also, it does stipulate that you can provide parking maximums and think about transportation demand management strategies. You may also use shared parking arrangements to meet parking standards. So I'm thinking of situations where a very small lot that, you know, the residential structure may take up 90% of the lot area, they could come up with an arrangement with the grocery store or the church or some other use nearby that would allow for shared parking in those situations. Parking has been a limiting factor in redevelopment of downtown properties, especially. So this statute limits the amount that a community can require and also provides that flexibility for shared parking in statute.
And ADUs on that first point, not more than one per dwelling unit. Are any required for an ADU in a growth area?
Part of the LD 2003
Right.
statute said you can't require additional parking for ADUs at all.
And that still holds.
That has not changed.
So
Can you-
we're in compliance with obviously the ADU part, but we had sent in to the public hearing from the board, we'd sent a viewpoint from our town about the parking situation. We don't have the examples that you listed, so that's an issue. So we didn't move forward with this part of the law.
Okay.
So just so I'm clear, if you have a unit and an ADU, you still cannot require more than one parking unit for that complex.
Right, yeah. And this would be most applicable to like a multifamily building where you would be in a situation of looking at 4 or 5 parking spaces. Most family homes that have off-street parking have driveways. They would accommodate 1 or 2 units anyway, 1 or 2 vehicles. This is more for those situations where you have a tight lot.
Dense.
Exactly.
So Ben, can you explain a little bit more the second bullet point about parking maximums and then the transportation demand management strategies?
So I think the statute really makes it clear that towns have the ability to do these things. And my impression is that they could always do these things. It's really just kind of calling it to their attention that a parking maximum is kind of a different philosophy of regulating parking, where many communities have parking tables in their site plan ordinance that says you have to have at least this many spaces per square foot, or this many spaces per chair in a barber shop, and this many spaces per seat in a restaurant. A parking maximum says you may have no more than X number of spaces per chair or square foot, or however else the parking gets established, but it's more like a cap than a minimum. Transportation demand management is the ability to reduce traffic, but also parking demand by allowing things like bicycle parking, thinking about proximity to transit and van pools as ways to, on a very site-specific basis, reduce the number of parking requirements. So some of these things would certainly be applicable. You may, as a community, say, look, well, if you provide 2 or 3 bicycle parking spaces, you can reduce the number of parking spaces by 1 or 2 for vehicles. I don't know how feasible it might be talking about transit or fixed route buses. Transportation demand covers a lot of territory, and there's a lot of different strategies that you could use. But when it comes to residential development, they're often related to transit, bicycle parking, and those techniques, those kinds of strategies.
Yeah, I think the struggle for the town is, definitely with the parking, we've heard from the community, their concerns over parking. Certainly, the town regulates on-street parking to curb some of this. I think the concern that we see is other states, when they've done similar measures, they've at least been methodical about keeping the reduced parking requirements based off how close you are from public transportation. And for towns in Maine, there's a lot of areas that we don't have public transit as an option for folks. So I didn't know if the law allowed for, a certain, radius or proximity to where there is transportation infrastructure in place.
I don't believe it does. I think that there are some things in here, and again, this is related to parking, so that you may, you have to set a minimum threshold. No more, you can require no more than one, but that doesn't mean a individual developer or project owner may say, look, I'm going to need 1.5 or 2 or some number of spaces beyond that, but from a regulatory standpoint, you can require no more than one.
Per unit?
Per unit.
So, I mean, we did change the land use ordinance, not this past June, I believe it was November of last year, to address some of this concern over a bedroom count. So if it was 3 bedrooms or more, you need 2 parking spaces. But if it was 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms or less, it would just need 1 space. So we did address this a little bit. I do think that, with a multifamily, most multifamilies are probably two bedrooms or less in most cases. But there's 3 units or more is where this is going to be the rub on how many parking spaces do they need per dwelling.
And just a quick comment, just 67% of Maine households have 1 to 2 people in them. So again, the idea, aligning the parking, and we talked about this the last time as well, aligning the parking minimum, you can't set a minimum higher, is reflecting that, but it also doesn't prevent a developer who's obviously targeting a particular market from including the level of parking that market and the people that would be living there would need. So I just want to make sure that, just to say that again, because I think it's really important to say this doesn't mean that everyone is going to build the same thing with the same number of parking spaces.
But that statewide number in a resort community kind of doesn't work at all. We have 10 cars at a house on the 4th of July weekend and, in places all over town.
I just think that for towns like this is a potential issue because we just don't have the road. We don't have the roads that can handle off-street parking. So I'm just saying, I think that is my concern is that.
Yep.
So I think part of, and so maybe Tracy, a rep here, if, so we had sent that letter up and we didn't get any responses back for the public hearing. And I think, it was in regards to this and, we had gone through, Galen had pulled streets. We had seen one-way streets that we have, streets that aren't of current standard width, are undersized streets. So, we are not in compliance. The board did not put this forward to vote. We can't. So I think this is where I'm just wondering, because we had sent our letters and it's to what David and Paul just said, we're a coastal community. We have visitors, we have houses, we have small streets. So this doesn't make sense. This, to use Rep. Gear's terms, this does not pencil out for us. The math doesn't work. So we really need help. So if you're saying, okay, what can, out of everything we're covering, what do you need help with? We need relief on this parking requirement. We can't do it.
Yeah. That was a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
I believe that was a rhetorical question. Evidently it was.
Well, I guess the
Yeah.
rhetorical answer is,
So-
make some bike spots in front of our mass transportation hub,
Yeah.
and that'll solve the whole problem.
So again, I think, from a planner perspective, I don't think this provision is going to play too much of an issue for you in really making any changes to the ordinance because it's only going to apply to 3 bedrooms or more is where we have the rub of 2 space requirement. most of these affordable housing projects are going to be 4 units plus, and they're going to be under 2 bedrooms. So they're going to only require 1 space in our land use ordinance. So unless someone's building a big multifamily with 3 bedrooms or more, which I don't see that as the normal case, at least from my experience, this provision is probably not going to, it's only going to be an issue on single-family lots. is where I
Does
think you're
this
going to run.
only apply to affordable housing?
No.
No,
applies
it
to
doesn't. That's the
No.
point, right? I thought I was like with
Yeah.
the dead cat again.
But I want to make sure,
Alive
can
or
I,
dead,
oh,
dead or alive.
sorry, go ahead. I just want to make sure, if there are concerns about tourist visitors, people coming and staying, with their, bridal shower party or whatever, this isn't designed to address that, and I don't think a parking ordinance or a parking, norm for the state can. I think that's an issue that absolutely, I think we should be addressing and thinking about in terms of our people parking where they should. But then, again, the idea here is just to make sure that we are not over-requiring parking, which is something that is often an inhibitor to creating housing that people need, so.
No, I would agree with that, Tracy. I think part of it just is, if you look at the structure of the town on the roads, it could happen that some of these roads can't handle. That just can't, I mean, we had Galen do it, there were roads in town where you could have parking on both sides. If you actually parked cars on both sides, no one's going down that road. So I just think, from our standpoint, it's a kind of a tricky, sticky point.
So, yeah, and I think we might have to just put a pin in this one, because I think that it's probably worth further discussion.
Right, and I think before we pin it, the example I want to pin it on is in the port, in our growth area, easy peasy, 5,000 square foot, 1 house goes down, 4 units go up. Each unit has 2 bedrooms, 2 cars, potentially. So that means 4 cars have to find some home on one of our roads where we have none. So that, therein lies. We don't have to make it complicated about 4th of July weekend. We just go back to the simple 4 units where 1 used to exist. You now doubled or quadrupled the number of bedrooms. And I find this somewhat ironic in our town right now, because we have short-term rental ordinances where we have required a short-term renter that has 4 bedrooms to have 4 off-street parking spots to give them a license. So it seems a little like, I don't know, a little strange to me.
We can come back.
No, I know, but I just needed to pin that.
Okay, we can have that.
Yeah.
We're pinning.
It's totally pinned.
I think this is the last one. LD 2173 does allow for childcare. A town has to allow childcare and family childcare providers as permitted uses in areas that are zoned for residential. They are subject to the same requirements from a dimensional and lot consideration standpoint as single-family homes. And again, that's part of the statute that takes effect next year.
What was the genesis for this?
Can I just ask, this is home-based childcare, or is this?
A childcare facility, which is
facility,
defined
which is-
in statute,
okay.
as well as family childcare defined in statute. So
Okay.
it could be small or larger.
Yeah, what was the genesis for this provision? Because it seems out of balance with the rest of the provisions that we're dealing with housing here.
Yeah, and this was a bill, Mary Beth has called it the Fix-It Bill. There were some impacts in more rural areas that are really suffering from a shortage and a lack of childcare, and clarifying that you must permit childcare in residential zones was an important change that they wanted to make. So that was really, that came from a very specific genesis of communities that were struggling.
Yeah, I can see I understand the rationale behind it. I guess I'm concerned that this is not considered a conditional use, given that some of these childcare centers can be quite large, that require some sort of public notification process and abutter considerations for what the potential impact could be. I just think that was quite short-sighted to make it a permitted use in all residential zones, without considering what that impact would be for a larger, I'm not talking about family, like small little, but larger institutional ones, that is concerning.
Okay, thanks.
That playground's an issue.
Pick up and drop off.
20 cars dropping off.
There were a number of definition updates and clarifications, particularly around what is sewer and water that meet the requirements for the statute. Not all of these systems are going to be public utilities. Some will be built by the project and operated as a private system, but still meet the level to be counted. It also kind of, I believe, recalibrated all the deadlines so that they're all on the same schedule. So there's a number of FAQs here, and they do have answers on them. So these were provided by the Housing Opportunity Program folks. We can go through these, and if they're applicable, we can slow down and spend some time on them, or you can digest the answers on the slides at your own pace once this session's over. But there were a lot of clarifications, requests for clarification, questions related to the density requirements for third and fourth units, like we talked about earlier today. So you have to be no more restrictive for those additional units, but you could be less restrictive. So there also does seem to be a lack of clarity, municipal room to make a decision about, since the bill mentions 2 units in one structure in non-growth areas with public water and sewer, what about 2 single-family units on a single lot? It doesn't speak to the density in that situation. So if you have 2 houses that are detached on the same lot, there's some room for local decision-making. This is an interesting slide that I will beg not to go too deeply into, but it is the math behind the state plumbing code requirements. I think planners and code officers know the rule of thumb is 20,000 square feet for a single-family home, not on public water and sewer, but this is why. There's a formula in statute, and there's formulas that deal with like how large lots need to be for different uses. If you have 3 units or 2 units, the actual size of the property needs to be large enough to locate a well as well as a septic system for the use. So the more intensive the use, the larger the lot in statute. And this is all referenced here, but it does tell you where to go in statute.
Hey, Ben, we had a request.
Okay?
If everyone is okay to follow up on the frequently asked questions, because we did do a lot of discussion
Yep.
during, unless there's something you think that we've missed that you want to draw our attention to.
I think this is one.
Okay.
In that there is the ability to have a waiver from the state for a minimum lot size waiver. So this is how you could get more than one dwelling unit on a lot that's smaller than 20,000 square feet. And it involves a compliant first-time system that is an engineered pre-treatment that allows you to have some removal, some pre-treatment of the nitrates before they get into the ground, so that the size of the septic field and therefore the size of the lot can be smaller than the normal 20,000 square foot, which is assuming a stone bed conventional septic system.
And so that's through the state.
That is on the books today, and that I wanted to bring that up in as, you know, a way that areas outside of public water and sewer could accommodate development on smaller than 20,000 square foot in some situations.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so this was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you to
Yes, thank you.
Representative Gear.
so,
If I could just make a couple of closing comments? Would that be all right?
yeah, John put me on the clock, so.
Just very quickly. I did want to say that with regard to all of the work that we've been doing on these bills, the reason that we are working on housing so much is because we do have indeed a housing crisis. And in fact, as I knock on doors throughout our communities, I hear more and more about older people who would like to downsize but can't sell their house because there's nowhere they can go and stay in the town that they love and have lived in for 50, 60, 70 years. Increasingly, young families and young people are absolutely unable to live anywhere near here, whether they're going to be working at the Nonantum or in the schools or in our public safety services. We, as a community, I feel very, very strongly that we need to absolutely address this issue. And we need to do it in a way that is consistent with the responsibilities that I believe all municipalities have in the state of Maine, which is to all contribute something to how we're going to solve our affordable housing crisis. And I would extend that to the whole country because everyone is in a very similar situation. So I did want to say that I did receive the letter from the Select Board. And that was part of the work that we did in considering the bill. At the time that I received that letter, I was working very closely with Galen on the specific considerations that were very, very important to the town. And there was a lot of work going on. So I did want to say that I received that letter, but I was not willing to entertain the thought at the time of exempting Kennebunkport from the law, which was the request that I read in the law. In the letter. And I did want to say this out loud because this is a really important topic for us to wrestle with. And as we worked on the bill, the goal of the bill was to find and make the changes in law that would be a baseline for all Maine communities. And I do feel like we had a great collaboration. Like I said, I really want to shout out Galen and the rest of the folks I talked with in our community who contributed in really, really meaningful ways to this bill. As we talked about before, I think it's really important for you all as a select board and as the Growth Planning Committee to look at these provisions as tools that you can use in addressing the problem of affordable housing in our community. We're already doing a great job. The Housing Trust is doing a really good work in finding places to build and create and preserve housing, and I want that work to continue. And I think if we look at some of these changes that way, and also then look at changes that need to be made as well in the future, I think we have a great opportunity to keep doing that good work. So I really value all of you, the time and effort that you all are putting in, and I think that we can all be really a part of the solution. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Rep. Care. Okay, so now we go to, so Ben, don't go anywhere because we might keep coming back to you on this stuff. So Galen has put together a list that we'd like to walk down, and then the GPC's been compiling some ideas, so part of the, I'll just do a quick high level to ground you to some of the thoughts before we dive into the list. So GPC's been thinking through, okay, how do we maintain the look and character of our town? So do we do some kind of historical light, type of, you have to have a slope roof or, things like that. So you're going to hear some of that tonight. The other thing is we kicked around a couple times, do we reopen the comp plan? Do we redefine the growth area for specific things? So those are some things that we had been kicking around in, and what's the ramifications of that, and maybe Ben could help us with that, but Galen will.
Sorry, we have two interns that are working for Town Hall, and they're both interested in planning and policy, so we brought them here tonight to see how the sausage is made. So I wanted to make sure they had at least the memo that I prepared for you all, just so that they could follow along.
Would you introduce them?
Sorry.
Yes.
So we have Sam and Evelyn. So Sam is helping us over at the Codes and Planning as our assistant, and then Evelyn is helping Lori as the town manager when Yanina is on maternity leave. So we're glad for their
Welcome, guys.
presence with us.
And
So
we got to make sure we copy agendas.
Yeah. Yeah. When I walk in, I was like, whoa.
So we heard a lot of information tonight, and I summarized a list of here are possible things that, we can tackle as a community before the deadline to submit to the select board for the June ballot. So the deadline, I believe, is usually by January that we need to submit this language. So we don't have too much time, especially with how complex some of these topics are. And so again, I'd like to go a broad overview, and if you have any questions about them, I can discuss it. But what I'm really looking from the select board is to help give feedback and guidance to the planning staff as well as to the GPC on where you want us to target our efforts, because we do have only a limited amount of time to work on this language. So the first one, of course, is the residential density requirements. So this is to comply with LD 2173. We went over that already in pretty great detail. The second bullet point is about split zoning for Dock Square. So again, have the second and upper levels is allowed for residential use, but the first floor is excluded for residential, as we discussed earlier. We amend the parking standards to comply with LD 427. The next one is the explore amendments to the town's growth area found in the comp plan. So do we want to constrict the growth area in the comp plan? And that's, again, a question I still haven't heard from MOCA on the process involved, especially since our comp plan was adopted in '23. It's been a few years, so I don't have a clear timeline yet. So if anyone from MOCA is able to help us with understanding that timeline, that would be great.
So we're going to come back and talk about each of these individually, right?
Yep.
Okay, go.
If you have questions, let me know.
Now or later?
You can do now if you want. Yeah.
Well, but, so that would basically move the growth from, it would move 5,000, it would go to 10,000, because now you'd be out, good.
Yep.
But Galen, just because we move the growth area doesn't change the water sewer.
Correct.
No, so that's why you're in water
Yep.
sewer without growth, which is 10,000.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd still have that. It'd be less density,
Right.
but you would still have a density.
Right.
Yep. Do we include historical design standards section in the land use ordinance for the Cape Arundel and the Dock Square, the village historic districts? So that's something that's kind of missing. I know GPC, we've had some pretty good early discussions about this. Preventing some of these larger historical homes from being demolished and building separate cottages that don't mix with the look and feel of the town. That's something that you do have some leeway on having historical design standards, and rightly justification for putting those standards in place to preserve the look and feel of these two important areas of town. So right now, the GPC has received the Kennebunk, Kittery, and York languages to work with, but again, getting guidance from the select board would be helpful on what you want to tackle.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We discussed about excluding land in the FEMA 100-year storms as well as the coastal hazard areas. That was discussed tonight, if we want to tackle that. The next one, we sort of briefly chatted about that with the representative about creating a climate resilience overlay zone. So this is similar to what South Portland is currently doing, and I think that's why I wanted confirmation from the state where they want to focus their efforts on the 3.9 feet level sea rise. Do we want to put that overlay in the zone preemptively as the state is working towards that as well, to prevent additional dwellings?
So
in that
this would
area?
be a preemptive, but it won't override the current maps that they're using for the thing until whenever the state decides to acknowledge the new map.
Right.
Right.
I think, again, it's working close communication with the state on this. I think, given how the state has had multiple climate action plans and they've addressed the high-level sea rise, I don't see the policy shifting. I think they understand the justification for exempting additional dwellings in those areas where it's going to be problematic moving forward.
And this is, go ahead.
This will be an instance like we had the ADU language in 2003 came in and we already had the language. So this will
Right.
be similar. Well, we go up to the 3.9, we have that map available, and then when the state catches up to us, we say,
We're there.
we're
Yeah.
there.
And this is 3.9 feet by 2,100.
Right.
So in the next 75 years, so that's like a foot every 25 years.
If it's linear.
That's the projection.
That's only if it's linear.
Yeah, well, that's true. And what does that do as a practical matter, like Goose Rocks Beach and all of those? I mean, is there going to be, people aren't going to be able to get permits, flood insurance, or housing insurance premiums are going to go up? You're going to have to get special permission if you do a big renovation. You're going to have to raise your house. But what is the impact on the actual day-to-day workings of people who are going to live here in these zones that are going to get designated now? Because you put an official government document out there, you put an overlay, and the town has said, yeah, we agree with it. Is it, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, I think right now our intention is, preventing additional growth and density in those areas where they're outside the floodplain and outside the dune hazard area. This would be a more proactive planning on preventing additional density in that area.
Won't this increase the floodplain?
No.
How does that
The
work?
floodplain is determined by FEMA. So it is either done by that way, or the property owner makes a letter of map revision. So there's multiple ways to amend the flood maps, but we are not amending the flood maps.
We don't regulate them.
Yeah, no.
But we're gonna have an overlay zone.
Correct.
That would impact zoning requirements. So how many houses you can.
Sonia, but if someone has to lift their house, does it change how high they have to lift the house?
No.
Okay, that's what you want to know.
Is that what your
That's a
question was?
separate statute that
Good,
allows.
as I say,
Right.
no.
But it does
Okay.
affect, it does affect the property values with open land that people own. If you want to go ahead and extend that,
You can't build
all of
on
a
it.
sudden the property goes, what's it worth?
You're redlining a bunch of land that
That's
people
a scary
own
thought.
that they can't develop now.
Yeah, as we saw with the latest FEMA flood maps, the FEMA flood maps actually encroached more inland, especially in Goose Rocks Beach. We have not seen home prices go down because of that, even though a lot of people are required to get flood insurance now. So I want to be careful on that it's not necessarily going to impact the home values that are presently down there.
Well, but
With this
include
designation.
language to exclude land within the FEMA 100-year flood. Okay, that's.
Yep, that's for
I'm cool with
residential
that.
area. Yep.
That's FEMA, that's coming, that's
Yep.
all in the GIS. I just have a bit of discomfort about this 3.9, exclude new residential dwelling placements. So that means, to Alan's point, if I have a big lot down there off of Goose Rocks Beach, and right now I can build on it, and I bought it to retire in, and I've been paying it off, and now you're gonna stroke the pen and we're gonna vote for it on, at best, some sort of a estimate, right? And I can't build my retirement home there.
No, you
Is
can
that-
build your retirement, you just can't build a 4-unit.
So the language would still allow, we have a non-conforming section, which is Article 8 of the land use ordinance. So if it's a lot of record, which means it was a lot established before 1985, you have by rights the allowance to build a home.
I don't wanna be a stickler.
Yep.
Explore a climate resiliency overlay zone for 3.9 feet of sea level rise to exclude new residential dwelling placement.
Yep. So this is
Stop.
additional. So what
It's-
I'm
I
saying.
got it. My lot, I want to build my retirement
Yep.
home on there. That would be an additional structure, wouldn't it?
No, because the Article 8 allows for a non-conforming lot of record that's established in 1985 to be built as a matter of right. Even if you're in the floodplain, you're allowed to build a single-family home.
Okay.
Because
Then-
that's considered, if we did not have that language in there, it would be considered a taking by the town, and that's why that language is there.
Then to Alan's point, I own it.
Yep.
I changed my mind. I want to go to Boca. I can't sell that lot now because I can't put anything on it because now it's under some overlay.
Yes, you can sell it, and the person can build a lot on it,
Okay,
because
Gabe,
you're not
then
changing.
What
lot.
exactly is this, to Joe's point, I mean, if you're reading this.
I mean, I'm just
it does
reading
seem
your
like
words.
You can't build anything. I don't care about the other ordinances. What exactly is this implying?
Sure.
So I think the word here is specifically for this increased density.
But that's not what it says.
But I know that's not what it says.
I will rephrase it,
We
yes,
will
it's additional
rephrase it.
dwellings in addition to a single family on a lot.
That's a lot different.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
so
got
I think that, yeah.
Good.
Yes, it's that reading was the one thing I was good at.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, not math or physics.
Literal interpretation.
So it
so-
sounds like we need some work on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next one is a policy shift in the lot coverage definition. We discussed this with stormwater. So at present, right now, lot coverage only applies outside of shoreland zoning to building structure. It does not apply to all impervious surfaces. And so it's a discussion point for the town. Do you want to include all impervious surfaces, including a hardscape, pavement, driveway, graveled areas, as part of your lot coverage? And so that's outside of the shoreland zone.
And it just blows me away that a gravel driveway will become so compacted that it becomes impervious?
Yes,
So I just
yes, I know.
gotta
You
believe
know,
that.
I know.
On this point, you've told us in the past that most towns don't differentiate lot, they have one definition of lot coverage.
Yeah, especially if they're in MS4, you would just count all impervious coverages as
Of
part of your
course.
lot coverage.
Got
Yep. Yep. Any
So-
other questions on that one? Because that's,
So can I make a suggestion?
yep,
Can we start warming up the select board with an easy one?
an easy one.
Yeah, so I think an easy one would be the historical design standard. Like, would we want to give? So,
Oh, I think an easier one.
Absolutely.
I think an easier one would be,
well,
it doesn't-
can we not argue about easy?
Which is
Can we
easy?
just-
Yeah.
just
Yes.
Where's the easy button?
Okay,
You
I'm
forgot
just
the
going to
easy
start
button.
with, it may not be the easiest, but I believe it's an
It's an
easy one.
that's the way to say it.
Okay, so can we start with, would the board like to give guidance to the GPC committee to start looking through historical standards and to put that into what are inclusions for this LD 2173 and 1829?
I hope we don't go to the point where we're controlling what color the front door is, but yes, I do believe there ought to be some
So,
balance there.
I agree
I
with
agree.
what he said.
Yeah, but yes.
So
to not
let-
become a historic, there's gotta be some wiggle room for the.
right, so I think, so we won't, so this is a good, this is good for the GPC committee to hear. So Kenny Bunkport will do, they're more stringent, so we would be. Kenny Bunk is, I'm already adding us together. Whoa. Whoa. Wow, there was a moment. So Kenny Bunk is more stringent. They have colors. We would be more of a structural look and feel. So for example, a
Floor-based.
pitched roof, right? Might be something we want to have, right, to keep that look and feel. Clapboard-ish type, shingle-ish type siding, you know. No.
Right.
Angles, we want multiple angles, that's right, but you bet.
I
Yes,
just don't
think
want
we're-
getting into, like, colors, getting into energy efficiency windows that can't be placed on the house now because they gotta go back to.
I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, so I think we're all, is any questions from the GPC committee before we?
I do think color is important, not super restrictive, but there are many colors that are considered historic, many. I don't want a pink
Well,
house down there.
I'll let you guys work it, you work it out, that's, yeah.
As long as you exclude
Yeah,
the flat.
okay, so the board has,
Color palette.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, okay, so David would like to give the next easiest one.
I think adding language to the split zoning for Dock Square to prevent new residential uses on ground
Yes,
levels.
absolutely, that
Would be an
that's
easy
a
one.
total one.
Okay, so that's a good one. Dave, I agree with you, that was easy.
Hey, number one, don't we have to do that? I mean, if it's the law, right?
Well, we will, yeah, so I think that's the guidance is that we would put in the language for the
I think we need to
units.
move in that direction.
We move in that
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got one, we've got two, we've got one, two, we got five, which is
What-
the historic.
But moving the growth zone, tell me more about what that would mean.
What number are you on?
Oh, that's 1, 2, 3, 4?
Oh, so, okay, so here's some of the thoughts, and so that's why some of these, I believe, are, I'll wait for Galen to weigh in, but I believe some of these are sort of mixed. So for example, our chair Dan, was talking about the 3.9-foot 100-year line, and why would we have any density growth up on that line, right? So Rep. Gear talked about that, Dan brought that up, and so what he mentioned is, why don't we pull our growth area out of that zone? So, so you can achieve it two ways, I think. You could either have us draw our new line to the 3.9, and eventually when the state catches up to us, then they say, okay, yeah, everything in that zone is not density growth, if I understand that correctly. Or we open up the comp plan and redraw our line, taking out the current flood, the FEMA flood line, because our
Right.
court is still in there, and it's in the growth area. So
Right.
we take that out, because it's on sewer and water, and then we can walk it up to the 3.9, or we can leave it there.
See what it looks like. I'd love to see what that would look
So I
like to the
think
growth
the
area.
question is, when Galen comes back, the question to Galen is, if we draw the line, does that exempt us from having to open the comp plan and redefine the growth area? Does the floodplain carve enough out? And does eventually the 3.9 line then carve out that remaining part that we really want to get to?
As long as that's the only intent in changing the boundary. If you're changing the boundary because you want to reduce the amount of area that can use a 5,000 square foot lot, that's a different issue. Then you're doing it, and it's not malicious, but you're doing it to force larger minimum
No,
lots.
so the GPC team, I believe, has been straight up and looking at this problem in terms of adding density and the impact to that additional density with, because you remember, this group has been working about stormwater runoff, right? So when they're meeting twice a month, they're thinking about water running down our hills, water running from a house to another house. That's in their brain. And now you overlay density growth, and they're like, wait a minute. And that's why Dan brought the team back to, hey, not only do we have our floodplain, but we've got this 3.9, and if I draw that line, that comes up close to this fire house, into the hall that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a intent to say, we don't want that density.
Good,
that
good.
density doesn't make sense
Well, again, I
when
didn't know
we
what the
have- we're a
intent
coastal
was. Yeah,
town,
well,
right?
that's fair.
So
That's
we're a
fair.
coastal town.
But I like, that reason makes sense to me to reopen the comp plan if that's what we need to do.
Well, I think
Or
so-
just
That's
adopt the
So I
3.9.
think, Galen, the
Probably
question
a
on
big
the,
deal.
yeah, the
Can of
question on the
worms.
table is, so we wanted to open the comp plan to redefine the growth area so that we could walk back, we could get the floodplain area out. And to Dan's point that he brought up in a number of the meetings, we could walk it up to the 3.9 100-year line. So if we don't open the comp plan and we, with the 1829 fix-it thing that we just went through, does that now carve out, even though that's our growth area, does that thing that we just went through,
The 3.9.
Oh, yeah,
not the
yeah.
3, no, not the
Yeah.
3.9,
Oh,
the floodplain, does that in effect make it so that we don't have to open the comp plan for that? That it says that area in the floodplain, you can't do density growth?
So that would cover it, because as long as we have the exclusion language for the floodplain and the coastal hazard area, that would still supersede any comp plan changes. So even if you're in the growth area, but you're in the floodplain, you wouldn't be able to add additional density.
So it
Okay.
shrinks the growth area for that purpose.
Okay,
Correct.
so now.
What about the, sorry.
Okay, so now let's go to the second one,
Okay.
which is you have the language on here for number 7, which is the 3.9 feet, 100-foot
Yep.
line.
3.9 overlay.
So that's,
I'm for the FEMA 100 thing 100%, but I need a little more than a verbal, an audible from the line of scrimmage that exclude doesn't mean exclude.
okay, so let me just, let's put that,
Let's assume that happened.
well, yeah, let's assume
Then
that
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, okay, so let me just say, I'm just asking the intent about whether or not we want to open the comp plan. What will we be opening the comp plan for? So if we do the overlay, and what we just heard from Ben and Tracy, that the state's looking at this next 3.9 100-year overlay, and we already start and do our overlay with assuming what Joe wants a clarification, then that would have been the second reason why we wanted to open our comp plan, right? Because we knew that that was an issue. We didn't want density growth up to that 3.9 100-foot level. So those were, in my recollection, unless somebody else on the growth planning committee remembers or has a different reason, those were the two reasons I thought the comp plan was on the table, that we would want to open it. And if we do these other two things, then we don't have to open the comp plan. Is that?
Yeah, for most part, I know Dan said there's probably a few other sections that are outside of that area that I think the GPC thought, this is where we would like to see growth, but they didn't really think that growth was going to happen out there, or know about the density requirements because of our current zoning laws of 40,000 square feet. So there might be some on the border with the transition zone that are outside the 1,000 lineal feet of water and sewer that are right adjoining the transition area. So that was the only thing I remember Dan bringing up to us, but
Okay. So I think what we could do from that discussion is, to the board, we could, as long as the GPC committee agrees in this interpretation, we would not recommend for the GPC to open up the comp plan.
I'm good with that.
How does everybody feel about that?
Okay.
And instead,
I don't have an answer for that.
okay,
This is a wonderful list, but this is the first time I'm seeing.
right. Well, no, this is direction, no, we're just given overall
And
direction.
this is not in concrete, things can
This is
change.
not concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just direction so the
Yeah.
team can start working. I know, but we're trying to just give them a bucket and then they'll go
Yeah,
off and start working.
but I think the other things are lower in the bucket, I think.
Right.
Everything else here is pretty low.
I mean, can I just ask, I know it's getting late, does anyone else on the on the growth committee want to say anything? Do any of you want to add
No, I
to
think
this, or?
tonight we're really looking for your guidance. We don't want to work on something for 6 months and then come
Yeah,
in
no, I
in
think
6
that's
months and say, why the heck did you do that? We're not interested in that. So that's really what we're, and Galen knows, what we've been talking about. And opening the comp plan would seem like a big, big project, which if we can accomplish our goals without it. I think it would be helpful just to come back with the 3.9 and the flood, all
we
these
can
areas
explore that.
on a
Yeah.
map and have everybody look at it and say,
Yes.
oh, this is what this
Yes,
means.
yes,
Even before we come back, just
yes.
share that map so everybody could see that
Yeah.
before we worry about language and.
So I think the go-dos are, the first one, which is just get in compliance with LD 2173. The second one that David brought up, which is the language for Dock Square, to work on that. I don't know about the rest of the
Third's
select
the
board, but
historical,
I'm a hard no for the number 3.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, that's,
Okay, so that's a no from the board. And then item 4 is a no,
not needed, yeah.
not needed. Item 5 is a please go do and start feeding back some information to the select board,
Yep,
right?
yep.
That's the historical. And then I think
Those two go together, right?
so
Next two.
6 is done, right? We just have to add the language in, Galen, because it's in the bill.
Yeah, I think we're gonna just make clarifying language in there just to make sure it's quite clear with the density section of your ordinance that it excludes the floodplain.
Is the
Okay.
statute permissive or it's mandatory?
It was open to communities because there were some
Okay.
communities that wanted to build in the floodplain in mill towns, so that was why it was
Ah.
suggested. Yeah.
Got it.
And then I would say for 7,
No.
you would do just a exploratory overlay and then come back and give the board a look to see
Yes.
what that actually means, right? To
That's
Paul's
yeah,
point.
yeah.
I don't mind seeing what it looks like.
Yeah, we're just looking to see what it means.
Yep.
Yep. I think that's,
And to clarify what the exception means in terms
Right.
of
Yeah.
right,
the ability to develop there.
right.
And then, of course, the last one is something you're working on, right? Aren't you already working for the stormwater? What am I?
Stormwater is planned for
No,
November.
this is the lot coverage definition.
No, this
Which
is
we
the one
haven't
we
had.
talked about, your gravel definition.
So where are we
I
on
think we
that?
need to think about, I would like to think about this.
You want some more time, so put that on the back burner?
I think so,
All right.
because if we're just looking for, I think what I'm hearing is, our board needs to
That's fine.
have more of these things come
enough.
through and understand. We went into overload.
I think the only other thing is the request to have some sample lots to
Yeah.
show what the
Yeah.
development potential would actually look like.
Yeah.
Is, the tree farm on North Street and Beechwood corner, the 10 acres there, what zone, do we know?
It's outside of Village Residential.
Where are we?
No, is it growth?
North Street.
Yeah.
The Adams property?
It's
On the corner.
5 corners.
I thought it was in the growth area, but I could be,
Yes, I was talking about zoning versus
So
growth.
that would be a good thing that lot would be a good example
That's a
as,
cemetery,
as one to understand, for the board to understand because that has a lot of road frontage, that's a corner, and it's a lot of land, and it's in the growth area,
Is that the growth area?
And it has wetlands.
and it has wetlands, and it has trees.
And trees.
the other one that again, bullet point wise, that's missing here, childcare facilities, because we have to allow that wherever single family is. Do you want performance standards in place that they still have to meet the requirements
I
to look out for
I
neighbors?
definitely would. I'm not comfortable with just saying that's permitted use without a neighbor. So that would mean we wouldn't be contacting the neighbors, we
So-
wouldn't have an open hearing,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
What
Unless
I would recommend is if we would add, your performance standards still apply to even permitted uses. So you can certainly do that you can require notification of the neighbors if you want. If there's something about, with noise or anything else,
Right.
you'd like to address.
Right.
But that was something we currently don't have. So if we have to comply with the law that says we have to allow it wherever there's a single-family use allowed, do we want performance standards to at least try to address some of the concerns?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We have to.
Yep, thank you, yep.
Okay.
Galen, you got a lot of work over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I'll send you my bill.
you're setting up the next guy.
I accept contracts.
Do you work remotely?
Okay, so we were gonna do some more work tonight. Yeah, whoa, read your agenda. So there was a review proposed land use ordinance changes from the zoning board of appeals. That was on the agenda for tonight.
And let's see, so, talk to us.
Galen?
Yep. So I'm going to have Nadia bring up the language for the screen. So we did have a conversation with the zoning board of appeals. They met for a conditional use that falls under their purview and for a home occupation. And it was during those conversations I've had with them that they are like, why are we getting these applications? It is kind of clunky process right now because currently most conditional uses go to the planning board. And so the planning board is very much well aware of how to administrate and go through site plan review process for all kinds of conditional uses. But for some reason, way back when, the town decided to put childcare centers, animal husbandry, and home occupations and handicrafts, which I've never seen that use ever used. But they've decided that goes to the ZBA. And so the ZBA is not, they don't normally meet, it's very infrequent. Normally, their cases handle variance requests and administrative appeals.
Right.
And so what's strange about this too is when you have a zoning board that is overseeing the conditional use process, they also, when it comes to an appeal, have to appeal to a superior court. So there's no local review or appeal process allowed if someone disagrees with what the ZBA decided. Another thing that's kind of strange is there are uses that are in shoreland zoning that are conditional uses, such as home occupation, that go to the planning board if it's in the shoreland zone, but if it's not in the shoreland zone, it goes to the ZBA. So there's a disconnect in some of these conditional uses. So what we are recommending, and this is the ZBA recommending this change, is that we look at home occupations in two ways now. So there's a type A that generates no traffic, and there's a type B that generates traffic. So is your use bringing people to your house, or is your use not? Home occupation type A, which is no traffic, would just be permitted through the code enforcement officer. Home occupation B, which is generating traffic, trips to your place, would go to the planning board instead of the zoning board. You'd still have to notify the abutters, go through the entire process. So that is the shift that is recommended there. And I think it makes a logical sense to take some of the work off the plate of the ZBA. And we currently have pretty robust standards for home occupations, so even if they are permitted use, they still have to follow those performance standards. So that's one part of the amendment process. Do you want me to go through all of them, or?
Well, what do you want us to give you direction on tonight?
Yeah, this is for,
We're-
our recommendation is this is on the
We're
November
planning
ballot.
to bring this forward,
Right.
we just didn't want you to be surprised
Correct.
Okay.
of changing all these minimal number of uses from ZBA to planning board. So basically, you'll see them crossed out from the
So
ZBA
this will
and
come,
added
okay,
to
so this will come in front of this, into the select
as,
board
as a
meeting.
potential change for November.
And
So-
for the GPC, I'm sorry to put this on you, because the ZBA doesn't meet as frequently, and they just had a meeting. So this is the first time they have seen it as well, so certainly if you have any feedback to give to the board, I think this is helpful. But our intent is to try to make these changes for the November ballot, since they are, I think, reasonable
Minimal.
in nature, but.
My only comment would be, I don't know how much would be considered traffic, like there, I mean, there might be a business that has occasional traffic, I don't know which one it would go into, you know.
It's
Yeah,
any
technically,
traffic.
it's any traffic right
Any
now. If you want a certain standard, we'd have to amend the language, but
No,
that's,
I think it-
right now, I thought just that's a good step,
Any traffic.
and then.
It's
we
like
can
common
certainly-
sense.
Yeah.
If there's,
Local deliveries wouldn't be something, so if they're just getting, UPS deliveries for supplies of whatever material they're doing, that wouldn't be traffic, it's customers, patrons,
Right.
clients that are
Are you
coming to
selling
your house.
out of the
Yeah.
house?
Correct.
Or servicing out
Yeah.
of the house, yes. Yeah, so I think I don't know, from the select board, I think we're ready to just have this come in front of us. Does anybody else feel differently?
This
or-
much, sounds great to me.
Sounds good.
What else you got?
So, Article.
planning board.
Let me go back up there to Article 4. So Article 4 is just the shift. I just wanted to show the shift here of what's being stricken out from Zoning Board of Appeals, and it's getting transferred to the respective agency reviews. So handcrafts, that is considered anything like rugs, crafting that you're doing in your house. Pottery falls under that category. Again, I've never seen the use be used, but I thought that's something
You
that
see potters.
the code enforcement officer can handle. Going down,
You want to leave,
we're
Ben?
good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ben.
sorry.
Thank you. I'm happy to stay if there's additional
No, I
questions.
think we're good,
I-
we're good.
We're good.
We're
Thank
good,
you.
thank you, Ben.
Thank you
Safe
very
travels.
much.
Thank you.
Sorry, you were so quiet, we
Thanks for
forgot.
coming.
Appreciate it.
Yay, Ben.
So this is Article 9, the ZBA appeals. So this is the section that gave the authority to the zoning board to review conditional uses. Since we're transferring them all over, it's
Yep.
no longer needed.
Perfect.
Good,
Okay.
all right.
And this one,
Thank you, Chris.
this section, I wanted to make this clear. We talked to MMA Legal about this section. So the zoning board was concerned with having a majority, a quorum present in order to make a
Right.
decision. So this language is being changed to allow, it has to be allowed under state law. You have to put it in your ordinance, not in your bylaws. So this was presently in their bylaws. They need to put it in their ordinance. That they can vote of a majority of the members present on an application when it's before them versus a quorum of the total members of the board. So that's the difference, because they're a 5-member board.
Yep,
So if only 3 members show up,
Yeah.
all 3 have to unanimously approve it right now. What they're concerned with is if they don't have a quorum, they would be able to go down to 2-1 decision. It's the majority of those present, not
Right.
the quorum.
Right.
And that's
But they
there's-
have a quorum present.
correct.
average.
You still have to have a quorum
Still have
present,
to
but it's
have
the
a quorum.
majority instead of it being,
it'll,
all 3 have to vote unanimously.
worst case,
That's it.
2-1.
That's what that language
Makes
means.
sense.
Yep.
Yes, sounds
Okay.
good.
And then the 14 days, right now in your ordinance, it requires that findings of fact have to be decided by the zoning board of appeals within 7 days. There is no state law requiring that you have to do that. So we're recommending a change here to 14 days to coincide with the bi-weekly schedule that the ZBA would have for more complex cases. Currently, what we do, just like we do for the planning board, is we write the draft findings of fact to help them out. And for smaller applications, that's not a problem, but in more complex cases where you'll have legal parties pitting one against the other, you'd want the extra time
Right.
to do it.
Right, we had problems in the ZBA with that.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, perfect.
So that's the ZBA changes that were not included as the GPC proposal that was in front of the board.
Okay,
So this is added to what we've already sent
thank
to
you.
you.
Good. Any questions from the board from Galen? Great, all right. All right, so in effort of time, we're going to zip through other business really quick.
So
If you
I
don't-
have a
oh,
procedural question to ask. So for the GPC, since you're meeting, are you fine with this language for the November ballot, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan? That's what I need a vote from you to go
Yeah.
send this to them.
this-
Yep,
Everything we
yep.
just saw up there?
Yeah, and Paul Cadigan gave a nice memo explaining it, I thought. So we should have a motion and a second.
All motion.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Thank you, Liz. All agree? It's consistent? Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And that's
much.
in front of you all, so.
Oh, thank you. All right, now it's in front of us. We got it. Thank you, guys. All right, so just quickly, other business for our board. I got to end this. Okay, so really quickly, from our board, other business, we were planning to have a joint meeting with Kennybunk Select Board. I talked with their chair, Miriam, the other day, yesterday. So their process is slightly different of how they work. They have subcommittees, and they've worked through, we were looking at meeting with two issues, the buses and then discussion on the river, specifically the houseboats.
Right.
So we are going to, on the bus situation, we will continue to do ours. They are working their stuff through their private businesses right now. Their board has voted not to do take any other actions at this point. So this season, they're going to work it through their private businesses that are working with the bus companies. And then I talked to Marion, and we'll continue doing our stuff with our reservation system and our 3 sites that we've listed. The second item was the river discussion. They, as Joe has talked with us, and we've talked in the previous meeting, they're working on language for an ordinance specifically for the moorings. It's Marion's understanding that the houseboat side of it on private dockings is not something that was brought forward to them at this point, and she's going to take the action to go back and find the genesis of why that wasn't brought up. She thought it was something to do, maybe a legal side, but she needed to go back and to revisit that, and then she'll get in touch with me. So I talked with Lori. We're going to probably have, a side meeting or a meeting first with a few of us just to walk through with Jamie, the harbor master, and Lori to see specific conversations that have happened on the Kennybunk side and some understanding. Lori and the team have also done some work about pulling stuff from other towns and what they've put on the books. So more to come on that from our end, okay? So we will not be having a July meeting, a joint meeting at this time like Kennybunk, okay? Any other business from anybody?
I'm good.
Can I have a motion that we adjourn?
I want to make a motion to get like a windbreaker or some sort of logo, like Selectboard or a parking thing, like,
With like a houseboat right there?
with a hull identification number.
Yeah.
We're losing Joe so quickly.
Second.
I had a first and a second to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned. Growth plan.
Motion to adjourn?
You guys want your
Motion to adjourn.
blade, like,
All in
logo?
favor? Joe?
GPC.
All said and good.
I
We
checked
are
out 15 minutes ago anyway. You didn't really need that.